If you had invested £10,000 in the S&P 500 index, a list of the 500 largest companies based in the US, back in January of 2020, your investment would now be worth something like £18,000, nearly double your investment in 5 short years. So you'd be forgiven for thinking that the best thing to do now would be to go all in on America to make sure you don't miss out on the next 5 years, right? Unfortunately, this kind of thinking is exactly what could end up costing you thousands of pounds in the long run. And after investing many millions of pounds from my clients, as well as some of my own money, I've learned that there is a much better strategy. That's why in this video, I'm going to show you why the S&P 500's recent run is misleading, and a simple strategy I use to secure the best results for my clients and myself. There's no doubt that over the last 10 years, the S&P 500 has done well. And if you just track that index for the last decade, you'd be a happy investor. And 10 years seems like a long time. 10 years ago, we found out what our wives really want when 50 Shades of Grey hit our bookshelves. We all argued about the colour of this dress. And we all learned about David Cameron's fondness for pork back in his uni days. Those were simpler times. But in investing terms, 10 years isn't really very long at all. If you look back further over the past 50 years, you'll see that the US market outperformed the rest of the world by about 1% annually. Case closed, right? But here's the thing. All of this performance came in just the last 8 years. To highlight my point, we need to talk about the lost decade.
A points drop never before seen on the US markets.
Apparently, a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center in New York.
3 and 4.5% generally across these markets. Let's talk about the speed with which we are watching this market deteriorate.
We're down over 16%. Dow at the same time has fallen about 18%.
For the period from January 2000 through to December 2009, if you were invested in the S&P 500, you'd have left feeling very disappointed. After all, this was an index that averaged more than 10% annualized returns before the year 2000. So why wouldn't history repeat itself for the global superpower that is the United States of America? Well, instead of delivering double-digit returns, it failed to deliver entirely, as for the next decade, annualized returns were down to around minus 1%. And yet, during this same period where the S&P 500 limped along like a sloth in reverse, for investors that had looked a bit further afield and invested more globally, beyond the US giants that dominate the S&P 500, they actually had a much better result. In particular, those that looked to smaller companies and emerging markets. And in fact, the same could be said for those investors piling in on emerging markets in 2009, ready for a repeat of the previous decade where they outperformed, only for the S&P 500 to go on and more than triple in the bounce back from the global financial crisis. US large cap growth stocks were some of the brightest stars during that span, whereas they'd failed to shine at all in the previous 10 years. What we have to try and avoid is the thinking that what has performed well recently will continue to be the best performing thing. This recency bias, meaning the tendency to overemphasize the importance of recent information when looking forward, can lead to poor investment decisions. But before we dive into what you should do to make better investment choices, you need to make sure your current investments match your retirement goals. And you need to know exactly what your retirement goals actually are. That's why we've created a free retirement questionnaire. You'll find a link in the description below. Please download it, it's totally free. This is the BlackRock Asset Return Map, potentially the nerdiest patchwork quilt you've ever seen. And although it won't keep you warm at night like Mr. Grey, it does hold some very interesting data. What this is showing you is the annual returns for selected asset classes ranked from best to worst within each calendar year over the last 10 years. For example, take a look at 2017, where the best performing place to be was Chinese stocks, up 54.3%. If you'd placed all your chips on China, ready for another bumper year in 2018, whoops, the worst performing asset class of them all, down 18.7% the following year. If you look at US equities, you'll see that with the exception of 2022, they have always been in the top half. And if you cast your eye to the summary on the right, you'll see their annualized returns top the pile at 13.7%. But remember, this data is only back to 2016. The data going back much further than this would show you a much bigger spread of results. For anyone saying that you'd be a fool not to back the US, I'd wager that they're talking to you with the last 10 years in mind. Depending on where you are in your financial life right now, it's very likely you'll be investing for much longer than this. So you need to think longer than this as a result. The truth is that this dominance that we've seen for the US recently, history tells us it rarely continues over longer time frames. Have you ever heard of Camarero? Camarero was a thoroughbred racehorse raised and raced in Puerto Rico. He was the winner of 73 races, including the Triple Crown. Now, the reason he is famous is because he set the world record of the most consecutive wins for a thoroughbred racehorse at 56 in a series of races between April 1953 and August 1955, a record that still stands to this day. Now you can imagine if you were a gambling man, it was pretty obvious who the favourite was going into these races. But due to the regulation at the time, big-time favourites like Camarero were not allowed to be wagered on, which meant that for most of Camarero's winning streak, no on-track bets were taken, which turned out to be a good thing for the gamblers, because just 9 days after securing the record, and no end to his reign, pun intended, in sight, he lost for the first time in his career. Just goes to show, no one stays on top forever. And when it comes to investing, there is a better strategy where you'll actually still be backing the US, just not blindly. My job as a financial planner is to learn what people want to achieve with their money and then recommend to them the most suitable product and investment portfolios that are going to deliver on these objectives. And the stock market plays a huge part in what I put in place, both for my clients and for myself. The most important aspect that drives most of your returns and your starting point when constructing a well-diversified, intelligent, data-driven investment portfolio is the asset allocation, by which to say, out of the money you're investing, how much as a percentage should be invested in what kind of assets? Should you have 100% of your money in stocks, or should you include 20% bonds, for example? What about 10% in property, or a small allocation to commodities like gold? These are all important decisions to make, and it's these calls that will have a bigger contribution to your overall returns, not which country you choose to favour. To do this, it requires a detailed knowledge of how these different assets perform, the different risks involved and how they interact with each other. Let's say for a moment that we're talking about someone with a long-term investment objective. Maybe it's retirement planning money, and they are comfortable with the ups and downs that come with investing. It may very well be appropriate to build a portfolio comprising 100% of stocks. The question is then, what stocks? The S&P 500? The US more broadly? Or should we diversify and hedge our bets further by looking to invest in global equities instead? I wouldn't bet against the US, but I wouldn't underestimate other markets either. Spreading our money across that patchwork quilt to try and smooth out the journey and not miss the potential opportunities available to us in other marketplaces outside of the US is a solid strategy. If you want to get deep into the data and if you're really trying to target growth more than manage volatility, you might want to tilt the portfolio towards smaller companies and value stocks, as long-term data would suggest there may well be some outperformance to be had here. And here's the thing about most global equity funds. You'll likely be heavily backing the US anyway. Take a look at what I know is a popular choice for investors, the FTSE All-World UCITS ETF, or VWRP for short. This fund uses a passive investment strategy to invest in large and mid-sized company stocks in developed and emerging markets. It currently holds 3,625 stocks, and its objective is to simply track the performance of the FTSE All-World Index. And it's done a good job of it too, look, tracking its benchmark pretty much blow by blow. So if you put your money in here, it's all going into stocks from around the world. But geographically speaking, here's what you're buying into. 64.5% is in the US, so £64.50 of every £100 is going into US companies. £15.60 goes to Europe, that includes us here in the UK, France, Germany, etc. £10 goes into emerging markets, by which we're talking about China, India, Taiwan, and so on. You're still backing the US over other countries. However, if we think about this even further, it's less about where a company is listed, but more about where it actually makes its money. We have to remember that US companies are in fact global entities, and they derive around 38% of their revenues from outside of the US. If you were to invest in the FTSE 100, the 100 largest companies in the UK, They get something like 78% of their revenue from outside the UK. GlaxoSmithKline, for example, barely has any revenue from inside the UK at all. You could argue that globalization has made some of the geographical arguments null and void, and we should simply be talking about diversifying to try and invest in as many of the greatest companies of the world, regardless of where they're based. My point being, most global investment strategies are market cap weighted, meaning more of the money you invest as a proportion goes into the larger economies, i.e. the US. You're still backing the US, you're just also having a flutter elsewhere in the process. You'll still feel the volatility of global stock markets, but your strategy is not pinned to a single economy. This means if there's a headline saying China is on a tear up again, you aren't panicking trying to remember your logins so you can sell your S&P 500 tracker and buy something Chinese. Why try to pick the winning country when you can buy them all? Most of the money I invest for my clients is to fund their dream retirement, and we do that using the principles I've discussed in this video. But building the investment strategy is only one piece of the puzzle you need to understand when it comes to your personal finances, especially if you're planning for retirement. Watch this next video here to get a better grasp of the 5 numbers you need to understand if you want to retire early.